Warm greetings from the Heights Inn. It is Everyday Shenanigans, and thanks for joining me. As most of you know, Robert Sylvester Kelly has been standing trial in New York, in a Brooklyn, New York courthouse. It is the U.S. versus Robert Sylvester Kelly. I would like to bring you to said information. This is key moments from week 4. A new accuser testified that she had been locked in a room for days before she was raped as the R&B superstar's trial continued in Brooklyn. 4 weeks into R. Kelly's federal trial in Brooklyn, new accusations emerged as a woman testified that she had been imprisoned in the singer's home, drugged, and raped. The woman who testified as Sonya is among 9 accusers who have taken the stand against the R&B superstar. That number includes 5 women central to the case against Mr. Kelly, who is accused of using his fame and a sizable group of employees and associates to recruit women and girls for sex. Set against the backdrop of the Me Too movement, the trial is the first time accusers have taken the stand against R&B singer, despite a trail of accusations spanning decades. The government expects to rest his case sometime next week, but the judge recently suggested that the jury would soon hear from another accuser who will lay out the details of Mr. Kelly's sexual encounters with the teenage Aaliyah, who died in a plane crash in 2001 and is listed in government records as Jane Doe number 1. Mr. Kelly, whose full name is Robert Sylvester Kelly, is charged with a count of racketeering and 8 violations of the anti-sex trafficking law known as the Mann Act. His 4-lawyer defense team argues that the criminal enterprise he is accused of leading was simply the operation of a successful music company. The lawyers have painted his accusers as disgruntled or jealous superfans and the relationships as consensual, and say they plan to mount a defense complete with their own witnesses following the government's case. A woman said she was in prison and raped after she went to R. Kelly's house to interview him. Over several hours of testimony this week, a woman who testified only as Sonya recalled meeting R. Kelly when she was an intern at a radio station in August 2003. She said she later traveled to Chicago after Mr. Kelly agreed to an interview, but he never went on the record. Instead, she said she was locked in a room in Mr. Kelly's home studio for several days without food and water and made to sign several non-disclosure agreements. She said Mr. Kelly's employees also went through her phone and gathered contact information of her close friends and family, including information about her young daughter. Eventually, after days without food, an employee brought her cold Chinese food and a soda, Sonya testified, adding that she lost consciousness after just a few bites. When she woke up, she felt a wetness between her legs, she said, and saw Mr. Kelly pulling up his pants in the corner of the room. I was extremely confused, the woman told the jury on Thursday. Her underwear was slung over the arm of a couch, she said, but she knew she had not removed them. It felt like something had been inside of me, she told the jury, saying later, I was sexually assaulted. On cross-examination, Devereaux Leon Canick, one of Mr. Kelly's defense lawyers, suggested that Sonya had fabricated the account of the kidnapping and rape after seeing a Lifetime documentary about the singer's encounters with other women. Mr. Canick also implied that Sonya had not been drugged by Mr. Kelly, but by MSG in the Chinese food. Okay. R. Kelly would not let his girlfriends ride in an Uber driven by a man, a former assistant said. When Mr. Kelly's longtime executive assistant took the stand Friday afternoon, she outlined the bizarre lengths she said the R&B artist went to in controlling the women in his sphere. Diane Copeland, who worked for the singer on and off for about 15 years, said that Mr. Kelly would not allow his living girlfriends to get in an Uber if a man was driving. She told the jury that if a male driver pulled up, I would have to call another one until a female driver appeared. She also said that her pay was docked on one occasion after she scheduled appointments for 2 of his living girlfriends at a nail salon where a man happened to work. Witnesses throughout the trial have testified that Mr. Kelly sought to restrict women's access to other men. Ms. Copeland, the 5th former employee to testify against the singer, said his living girlfriends were not free to roam the house. Once, she said, after doing nothing to stop a woman who was packing her suitcase to leave the singer, Mr. Kelly asked her why she had let the woman escape, quote unquote. Ms. Copeland said that as a female employee, she was able to move about, but that the freedom came with strings attached. She said the singer directed her to knock on the walls as she moved from one room to another to make sure that I announced my presence. The defense has not yet had a chance to cross-examine Ms. Copeland, who had been on the stand for about an hour when the court adjourned. Week 3, the first male accuser appears on the stand. And as most of you know who are following this trial and my content, a male has testified against Robert Kelly and is basically saying that he had promised this young man as a future as a rapper in exchange for sex when he was 17 years old. He has been using the name pseudonym Lewis in court. And basically he says, he just asked me, what was I willing to do for the music? And I'm not going to recap all of that, but that's from week 3. A male testified, and Mr. Kelly instructed him not to tell anyone about the said sexual encounter because why would he want people to know that he also likes men and boys? And it states in this article, when he asked him about fantasies and said such fantasies of men, the young man replied, he crawled over to him and performed oral sex. I was hoping that he didn't follow through, because that means the boy would have let him perform oral sex. And in order to perform oral sex on anyone, you would have to remove your clothes, or the person would have had to forcibly take your clothes off. Also, another female witness appeared on the stand but did not accuse Mr. Kelly of any mistreatment or sexual abuse. The government identified her as one of the 22 people who had encounters with the singer, some of which include rape and underage sex, but whose interactions did not fall within the criminal charges filed in Brooklyn. The woman, who gave her name only as Alexis, said that she began hanging out with Mr. Kelly in 2006 when she was 15, and said she spent the next 9 years visiting Mr. Kelly, with a 2-year hiatus when she became pregnant, with the details of her pregnancy not shared in court. Now, I do not know if this is Mr. Kelly's child or someone else's, but this is what was mentioned in testimony last week. Although Alexis said she could not recall how old she was when she began having sex with Mr. Kelly, she said that she was flying to see him in Chicago by 2007. At the time, Mr. Kelly had been indicted on a charge of child pornography in Illinois and would stand trial the next year. And of course, in that trial in 2008, Mr. Kelly was exonerated by all allegations of pornography. 12 members found him not guilty. And then also there's testimony of a 10-minute ceremony with Aaliyah, mentioned a week ago in testimony. Allegations of rape after a concert that took place in Miami. Her name is identified as Addie, and she is recalling an account of meeting Mr. Kelly in 1994, in September 1994. This is information that was all revealed last week. This woman is now 44 years of age, and she had never shared her story before. And then another accuser said Mr. Kelly gave her herpes. She's identified as Faith and Kate, and they accuse him of knowingly giving them herpes, Faith and Kate. This is their testimony from a week or so ago. I'm just recapping everything that's been going on. So basically, this information from this week is the same as all the others. Allegations of rape, allegations of mistreatment, starving, not being able to use the restroom, eat. Now we hear of an assistant saying she had to knock on walls to go from room to room. She had to announce her presence in the room. That was said by many of the women who have dealt with Mr. R. Kelly. They could not roam freely in the house. They had to announce their presence. So what I have to ask myself is, even with the employees, why would you subject yourself to this? Why would you subject yourself to being ridiculed, your pay docked for petty situations, talked down to? You saw how he was treating the women, because that's why you're in court testifying now. So why would you yourself allow someone to mistreat you? You're not dealing with him in a sexual manner. You don't like him. You're not attracted to him in that way. So why would you as an employee let R. Kelly subject you to inhumane treatment as a human being? And now you're testifying to the fact that he treated you in an inhumane, situation. And then yet people will still question why the women stayed and went to and fro, those who feel like they know what actually happened with R. Kelly and these said women. That some went to and fro were actually adult women. But as I've stated, people are mistreated by people every day, and they continue to deal with them, barter with them, lay with them, make children with them, set up house with them, play house with them, so forth and so on. You see, as the old saying, you have to know your worth, and that is true. And sometimes we don't know our worth, and that's why we continue to deal with people who do not mean us any good. Whether they are using us, manipulating us, which we are allowing, it is up to us to say, I no longer want to participate, or I will no longer engage in this said situation because I see signs that this person is not proper. They're not on the level that I am on, so I'm going to disengage. And basically, that is the best thing to do for any type of courtship relationship with anyone, be it your work, family, friends, foe, whomever, new acquaintance. You don't like their conversation, bow out. You continue to deal with them and you see signs that they are violent, narcissistic, they're wanting you to engage in sexual activity that you do not want to engage in. They're trying to solicit you to do felonious acts, sexual acts, sexual conversation, whatever the situation may be, bow out. And then you won't have a story to spend, such as these ladies. You understand what I'm saying? You won't have said stories to spin about anybody because you bowed out and you preserved your dignity and your self-respect. And we all can take heed to this said lesson, that when you feel uncomfortable, bow out. That is the said information coming out of New York. If you would like to donate to the channel, $Big Angie 129 Cash App. I will say, for these people who have indulged in dealing with Mr. Kelly, I find it very baffling that you stood by idly and watched these people, women, be mistreated, girls and grown women, be mistreated by him. You also allowed yourself to be mistreated by him. So in no means can you all go in the courtroom hooping and hollering and pretending that you are offended by people wanting to testify and you not wanting to testify, but you're going along with it for whatever reasons, whether it be you've done something felonious that is against the law that the state found out and they're offering you a plea to go, or clause rather, for you to go testify so you don't come up on other said charges. But I do believe all the people who went along with the said program in aiding Mr. Kelly to mistreat these women, they should also be tried as well, because they are a party, a cohort, and there are laws for this said type of behavior, which is the Mann Act, which is racketeering. And most of us heard this word used many times with dealing with the New York Mafia and other Mafia-style persons. You rode the ride, then you should also pay the piper. And that's how I feel about this situation, in any given situation. I want to bring you something else pertaining to this case. It was something else I meant to bring to the forefront pertaining to Robert Kelly. And this is the behavior of the people that's been attending court and people rallying for him outside. And it's absolutely ridiculous. The first story I brought you was by New York Times. I think it was New York Times. Maybe not. Sorry, I'm getting my information mixed up. But anyway, let me bring you something by TMZ. I thought that information was New York Times. So I want to make sure I get that correct. TMZ has some information pertaining to the foolishness going on at the courthouse, and then I will check out of here. Thank you all for joining me. R. Kelly prosecutors step in the name of love, fan trolls him at court. R. Kelly is getting loud support outside his sex crimes trial, and federal prosecutors look like they're getting ready for a dance routine thanks to one obnoxious fan with great timing. This video shot Friday morning outside the federal courthouse in Brooklyn is classic. Normally a team of assistant U.S. attorneys arriving to wrap up week 4 of the R. Kelly's trial would be super boring, but losing my place. But throw a little step in the name of love over it and, well, check it out. No prosecutors didn't bring their own entrance music. There was a fan by the front door of the courthouse blaring Kelly's tunes off his phone. And yes, the prank is probably in poor taste considering the changes in charges of the disgraced singers facing. Still, the timing of the attorneys is uncanny. They really do seem to be stepping on the beat, almost as if a lawyer flash mob's about to break out. Eventually, we're told a U.S. Marshal came out and asked the fan to turn it down, but the prosecutors had already gone inside to do their day jobs. Kelly's charged with 22 federal counts, including sex crimes, human trafficking, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and kidnapping. And that is the said information. Nothing major, but as I stated, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, there was some shenanigans in one of the overflow rooms where people were calling each other names and talking bad about the people who were testifying and calling them nasty, derogatory names. And got into disputes with other parties in the said overflow rooms. Now we got people blaring music outside. As I told you a week or so ago, there were men out there holding banners. They were Caucasian men. One was playing the bagpipe, which I thought was very interesting and odd, bizarre. Just very odd and bizarre to see white men out there holding banners to free R. Kelly and playing the bagpipe of all things. Now we've got someone outside, blocking view and playing music on a phone, which it is a free country. You can stand outside, talk to yourself, play music, so long as you're not putting your hands on anyone or yelling any obscenities or threatening anyone. But it just goes to show you the lengths people will go to show support for someone, such as Mr. Kelly. In the end, nobody can save Mr. Kelly but himself. And he's had years to save himself, and he chose not to. So, bickering with people in the courtroom, in the overflow rooms, arguing with people, name calling, standing outside playing the bagpipe, banners, playing music, hollering, screaming, yelling, playing music on jukeboxes, phones, however you're playing your music, in the end it doesn't matter. There's nothing you can do to save Robert Kelly because Robert Kelly put himself in this sad situation. So you continue to rally for him. All I can say is good luck. Just know that if he is found guilty, you better make sure you got a lot of coins stacked up to put on his commissary books in penitentiary. This is Everyday Shenanigans, and thanks for joining me.